I believe that one of the most important people to the gospel story today is somebody who is not named or not even mentioned. So who am I talking about? I'm thinking about the person, whoever it was, that first talked to Bartimaeus about who Jesus was. Whether it was a person or maybe multiple people, we don't know, because that detail isn't given here. But somebody spoke to Bartimaeus about Jesus in a way that was so compelling, so intriguing, that he was not only willing to cry out to our Lord when he was far away, but he would even keep searching for him even after being rebuked by the crowd, even after people were trying to stop him and he encountered obstacles in finding Jesus. He still wanted to find him because somebody spoke to him about Jesus in such a way that was so compelling and intriguing. This is evangelization. Just yesterday, our bishop was here. He celebrated the 9 a.m. Mass, and then we had a workshop for the St. Paul Street Evangelization group. And it was very interesting. I went to the workshops, and they were talking about ways of sharing our faith with others. And I figured might be nice to reflect on that today, especially in light of today's reading. You know, I think sometimes we have a wrong idea of what evangelization looks like because sometimes we see the bad example. People standing on the street corner with a sign telling people they're going to hell, screaming at them and pointing fingers, and not actually engaging in conversation. I actually think this is cowardice because they're not willing to have a real conversation or even open up. You know, talk heart to heart, have a personal story. Because really that's what evangelization is. It's a heart-to-heart sharing of what Jesus has done for us. And you know, this is the most natural thing in all the world. We as human beings have a natural desire to share stuff with one another. Think about what social media even is. Facebook and Twitter, it's filled with people just sharing stuff you probably didn't even really want to know. Pictures of what they had for breakfast in the morning and other things. But you know, it's natural as human beings. We want to just share. Well, this is what evangelization should be. We share things that are important to us, and so we share the gospel. One of the ways in which we can do this is by sharing with other people our testimony. What is it that Christ has done for us? And we can speak about it in a way that's so intriguing that, like Bartimaeus, when they hear us speak about who Jesus is and what Jesus has done in our life, then they'll want to know him and they'll seek him. And maybe, like Bartimaeus, they don't get an answer at first. But if we speak to them in a way that is so compelling, even after having obstacles put up in their way, they'll keep looking for him and eventually find him. One of the ways that we were practicing evangelization was just sharing our story, sharing our testimony. I remember doing this in seminary. And I was a little bit worried when I was comparing my testimony with the other students' testimonies, because I thought mine was going to be so boring, nobody would be very interested in it. Especially as my other classmates were getting up in front of the class and sharing their stories. They all had these really dramatic and theatrical conversion stories. And one after another, I thought, oh boy, I'm not going to measure up. One of my classmates was raised as an orphan in Vietnam after the Vietnam War. He was raised in that post-war period. And he told this really heartwarming story of how he was adopted into this family, and he would go fishing in these ponds that were perfectly circular near his neighborhood. And he only found out later they were perfectly circular because they were the craters from bombs that were dropped around their village and exploded mines. And this is the environment in which he grew up. And he said his family was nominally Buddhist, not terribly practicing, and he never heard of Jesus. But one night he was laying in his bed, and he had this experience of some very personal force calling to him. And he focused in on that idea of it being a person that was calling to him. But he didn't know what it was. But he made a vow that he would spend his life trying to find whatever that was calling to him. And then he went to college, and as he was studying history and learning more about the world, he learned about Christianity. And then he realized that's what it was. It was Jesus calling to him. And he converted, he became a Catholic, and then eventually entered the seminary and came to the United States, and that's how he was in my class. That's how I knew him. So it was just a really heartwarming story. It's this epic conversion story, you know? Another one of my classmates was a former Marine, and he had stories of, the battlefield and stuff like that. And I'm sitting there listening to all these, and I'm thinking, all right, here's my story. I was born into a Catholic family. I was baptized at like a month and a half or 2 months old. I've been Catholic all my life, went to Catholic school. Now I'm in seminary, and here I am. Hooray. So I was a little worried. But one thing I found in sharing that story with others, especially as we started to do street evangelization, and we worked in sometimes pairs or groups, I was very surprised. A lot of people would focus in on my story because they were surprised to hear that I've just been Catholic my whole life. And they'd be like, what, you never had a period of life where you went crazy and did all sorts of things and turned away from your faith? I was like, well, no, I guess I didn't really have that period in my life. And I was like a unicorn. It was very rare. So even though I was afraid, I thought maybe my story is going to be boring, or maybe they're not going to be interested in it. I found that simply being authentic and just sharing who you are with other people is the most powerful witness and powerful testimony that you can give. And we don't even have to have a happily ever after story, because of course our story's not over. What Jesus is doing in our life is continuing even in this moment, even with our struggles and our difficulties. It's happening right here and right now. And so even sharing those moments with other people, that is effective witness. That's testimony. A sharing from heart to heart about who our Lord is and what He has done and is doing in our life. This is simply what evangelization is. It doesn't have to be too complicated, and it's the most natural thing in the world for us to do. Here's a very concrete example. A very normal thing for people to talk about, especially when you maybe go back to school or you go back to work on Monday morning, is, how was your weekend? And one thing that you did this weekend is you came here to church. You heard the story of Bartimaeus. The preacher talked about evangelization. There you go. There's a witness. It doesn't have to be complicated. It's very natural. Simply sharing our faith with others. And when we do this, we're doing what somebody did, which was a kindness, which was an act of charity for Bartimaeus. They talked to him about Jesus in such a way that he wanted to know more. He wanted to find Jesus for himself. And he didn't let anything then stop him, because whoever talked to him in such a way that was so compelling and so intriguing that he wanted to find this person, Jesus. Well, brothers and sisters, let's follow that example of whoever it was. We don't know who it was. They aren't named or listed here in the gospel. But let's follow their example, bearing witness and testimony simply by sharing our hearts with others, sharing what is just so natural, what our Lord has done for us, so that they may want to find our Lord just as Bartimaeus did.